Let's now shift focus then and talk about what the government has achieved in its previous terms and what the last decade means for infrastructure and what now, stepping into elections, could the government do and what the next 5 years are going to be like. Who better than Vinayak Chatterjee joining in on the show right now to give us perspective on this. Vinayak, hi, morning. Good to have you on the show as always. It's election season, so let's begin with that because the last 10-year data on airports, roads, etc. has clearly shown solid growth. What do you think the next cycle is going to entail? What will be the government's focus area or will it be all of it?
Well, very clearly, as we see the tea leaves panning out, my bet will be that the government is going to prioritize railways. The signs are very, very clear. The last 2 decades have been the decades of roads. I'm not saying that attention is going to not be there on roads. In fact, a new massive program of close to 30,000 kilometers of access-controlled expressways is on the drawing board, and a big monetization program under InvITs, etc. So roads will be important, but railways is going to see far larger increases and attention and development than India has ever seen before. So very simply put, it's going to be railways. Others will carry on as normal, but back to you.
When you say railways, are you looking at modernization of the stations? Are you looking at modernization of the railway track, or this is pure vanilla capex this time, which would be towards increasing and upgrading the locomotive and the mechanical part of railways?
No. It's across the board. I would see capex back in completing the balance of electrification, which is almost close to 100%, but some percentages remain. So electrification, new tracks laying in the far-flung parts of India, particularly Northeast, new tracks for decongestion amongst very, very congested nodes like Mughal Sarai, etc., many such places. A new set of high-speed rail corridors, somewhere between Vande Bharat speed and the bullet train speed. 3 new corridors for bullet train to be announced. Modernization of stations, modernization of rolling stock. So to give a simple answer to your question, across the board investment in all aspects of railways to take this entire institution up to a different level of play. Back to you.
A sector which in a sense is important and crucial as India will grow, energy needs will grow, and the dependence on hydrocarbon has to reduce. So do you think a large amount of incremental capex of next 5 years from the government is going to be towards green energy, clean energy, solar energy, green hydrogen?
The answer is clear, but it is also clear now that compared to about 3-4 years back, when it was popular for everybody to downplay coal and thermal power, fossil fuel, the government isn't talking about that anymore. So please note that in the years ahead, at least in the next 3-4 years, there's close to 30,000 megawatts of coal power that is being freshly invested in, partly by government, partly by the private sector. Secondly, there are discussion papers already out on bringing some of the low-performing or moribund gas stations back to life with a very attractive package for the private sector. So while the emphasis on green is going to remain, and already, private sector has announced huge plans from the biggest corporates to medium-sized companies, everybody is into wind and solar. Excuse me. So that is going to continue. However, please note, and I'm taking a little detour here, that for the energy sector, India is actually in a very sweet spot now for particularly for stock market players. And let me explain this. There is clear indications that in the next 3 to 4 years or even 5 years, there's going to be much higher rate of power sector prices. The merchant rates are going to be rising. And obviously, the whole market will rise with it. That is because there had been a slowdown in the past on coal thermal, and renewable had not come up to the huge expectations. So there's a gap in generation in a scenario where GDP is growing, climate change is increased heat, all these things are happening. There are more people getting metered. So with all these changes, Indian power sector is actually in a sweet spot, including currently a boom in order books in the transmission sector by companies like KEC, Kalpataru, L&T, etc., who build who are EPC and other players in transmission, their order books are at a high because most of the remote renewable energy sites are getting connected. National grid is getting adjusted to, so transmission is on a high, and distribution, a whole lot of positive changes are happening in distribution, which is leading to a sizzle in the sector. And very shortly, they include entire country being covered by smart meters in the medium term. The introduction of time of day pricing from 1st April. It had to start with commercial and institutional from 1st April and households from next year, 1st April. And the introduction of policy for people being free to offer their services as a second licensee in the stranglehold of distribution markets. So it is actually a lesser known fact that the policy is out. Anybody can apply for a second license in an area where there's only one licensee. And that is probably one of the most significant policy measures that has largely got unnoticed. So watch the action after the election. Over to you.
Right, interesting. The other aspect of this kind of expansion, Vinayak, of course, is funding, right? You think the likes of NHAI, etc., have a good balance sheet strength to withhold this kind of capex and lending? Or you think the next 5 years is going to involve a lot more fundraisers, divestment, etc.?
Look, there were grey clouds over NHAI when the finance ministry had come up with some hard strictures that they were not to raise any more debt. And people predicted that there will be a drastic slowdown. But I think NHAI has managed the situation well. With whatever budgetary allocations it has got, it has used it well. It is one of the only few sectors in the infra sector which has shown demonstrable ability to raise private capital by managing InvITs very well. And they have crossed 1 lakh crore in InvITs. More is in the pipeline. And remember, toll collection has gone up significantly. And with the introduction of GPS-based tolling and plugging any remaining leakages, NHAI is well placed. That is not to say that private capital will not come in. As you and I know, there are intensive efforts in NHAI and Ministry of Roads to actually tweak the PPP format to make it far more positive for private capital to come in. We are waiting to see exactly what the contours of that will be. But back to you.
Vinayak, the hallmark of the current government has been doing all the heavy lifting.
Yes.
The total allocation towards capital expenditure is almost 3.5 to 4% of the total GDP. Now that's a very fat number. Do you see this kind of a commitment to continue into the future as well?
I do, because for the simple reason, the stated policy of this government is to keep pump priming the GDP by public investment in infrastructure. And it has a very simple logic. A very, very key functionary of finance ministry had shared a particular detail with us during one of the post-budget meetings last year, that they have an internal document which says that every 1 rupee spent on public infrastructure leads to 3 rupees of GDP, whereas 1 rupee spent on direct benefit transfer relates to 90 paisa growth in GDP. So with India having to maintain its track record in getting 7-8% GDP growth, there is no question that the public investment in infrastructure is going to remain not just at this level, but is going to increase at an average rate of 30% increase in the budgetary allocations year after year after year, which means in 3 years' time, it's going to double. At the same time, enough measures are coming in to attract private capital. And it's not that private capital is not coming in. Look at the sectors where private sector is already comfortable to invest. Transmission, renewables, airports, ports. These are areas where today you see private capital coming in. So it's not really fair to say that private capex is not coming in. It is coming in selective areas and it is avoiding certain areas. That's it.
Okay, so Vinayak, I'll close my eyes and go back to 2014. Let's imagine the infrastructure in India. It was appalling. Highways were messy. You had to stand on long toll nakas just to cross from one city to another city. GST was not implemented. 2024, the world is very different.
Yes.
24/7 power is a reality. Toll nakas are gone. GSTs got implemented. Average speed has gone up from 150 kilometers an hour to 300, 350 kilometers an hour. In 300 kilometers a day, I beg your pardon, not an hour, 300 kilometers a day in terms of some, in some highways. My question is that if I close my eyes and go back to 2030, what do you think we are likely to see in terms of an infrastructure upgrade now?
That's a very broad question. I don't know how much time you have, but let me try and be as precise as possible. In the road sector, you're going to get abolition of toll plazas, GPS-based tolling, and access-controlled world-class expressways. You're going to see a massive increase in railways in terms of speed, comfort, and close to international-style trains at different levels: bullet, high-speed, Vande Bharat, normal. In case of electricity, 24/7 power is going to be assured, and you're going to see a major change in the way households are treated with smart meters. They're going to be treated with far more respect in terms of quality of power, time of day pricing, and the various services. And you're going to see a lot more entrant power sector, private sector entering the distribution sector, which is going to increase the service levels to private consumers. You're going to see 20 new airports. You're going to see 3 new ports. You're going to see a drastic decrease in logistics cost. And actually, you have said it all. So this is going to be the new India. But I don't think you have enough time for me to keep going on and on. But the point you made is correct. It's a very, very different India. And it's a very, very positive India.
Stock market standpoint, you said, look, watch out for transmission railways. Those are 2 large themes, one backed by private sector, other backed by government. What are the other new themes which you think today are small, but over the course of 5, 7, 10 years, they could become very large?
Tough question. I would say that, see, transmission is a mix of both public and private investments. And railways will still largely be public investment because I haven't seen any great creativity in PPP formats there. But all medium-sized, small-sized, large players, global multinationals who are listed in India are going to see a certain very robust order book, as is being seen by transmission people. Anything connected with distribution and railway supplies, components, electricals, seats, furniture, whatever, you track down all the goods and services that will go into the railway sector and into the electricity sector, and map the companies who are providers of goods and services there. I would say they're all going to benefit. So your investors should try and now narrow down on stocks that they think are winners in their view.
Okay, Vinaya, good to have you on board. Thank you as always for giving us a 360-degree view of how things are shaping up within the entire infrastructure sector and what's next in the infra cycle. All right, that's the view coming in.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.